Can't believe you missed out on the Tekken World Tour Finals. We ended up not reacting to the second part of Tekken 7's Season 3 DLC because of you. Look, I'm sorry. I couldn't find time to do it. I was just really busy with real-life stuff. And besides, by the time I could work on it, Leroy was already out for like 2 weeks. Not to mention this past EVO where he was like, super broken. No excuses. That doesn't matter. You should have done it anyways. Yeah, man. His trailer was still sick with the music. And Ganryu's reveal with Julia's disgusted look on her face? That was pretty funny. And that other character looked pretty cool though. Oh, you mean not Sagat? Nah, fuck Humram. Whoa. Well, fuck you too, man. Wait, no, what? No, that's not what it... Anyways, since you made us miss out on the hype, you're gonna have to pay, buddy. Look, I'm sorry. Isn't there any way that I can repay you guys? Just please put the BS stick away. Kensei Sacred Fist? But I wanted to talk about this game today. Kensei it is. The Sony PlayStation is quite a marvel of a gaming console. Birthed from a failed partnership with Nintendo, it was introduced into the console market in the 90s as the new kid on the scene, being the main competitor to the two gaming giants and their consoles at the time, Sega Saturn and Nintendo's own Nintendo 64. Out of the three, the PlayStation managed to accumulate a vast library of games from both first-party and third-party devs, thanks to Sony's more welcoming approach to third-party developers than the other two companies. One of the main marketing points of the PlayStation at the time was its big push for 3D polygonal graphics, claiming that the 2D sprite-based graphics were a thing of the past. And with that, well, it sorta just became the hot new thing. From racing games to action-adventure games to even platformers, everyone was trying to get on some of that 3D action. This was especially no exception for the fighting game genre. Kicked off by the seminal classic, Virtua Fighter, it was made clear that fighting games could make the jump to the third dimension, it's just a matter of how well. And when the PlayStation hit store shelves, more and more fighting games were gradually coming out of the woodwork, wanting to get in on the 3D craze. Many of these ranged from pretty alright to, oh my god, who the fuck okayed this? Only a handful stood out from the rest, and one of those was Tekken. I already talked about this in a previous video, so I won't go over it again. But to surmise it, Tekken was one of the first 3D fighting games released by Namco on the original PlayStation, right after Battle Arena Toshinden. Despite it aging in dog years, it's still one of the most standout games in the fighting genre. It was even successful enough to receive 2 sequels, both of which were also equally successful, with a third game going on to not only becoming one of the best fighting games of all time, but also one of the greatest games in general of all time. And with every great success comes a great imitation. Well, more or less. Konami, however, being no stranger to fighting games themselves, saw how well Namco's Tekken 3 was doing and thought to themselves, hey, I'd like to try a little bit of that. Well, okay, maybe not. And bada bing, bada boom, we got Kensei Sacred Fist. Also known as BUGI in Japan, Kensei Sacred Fist is, well, a 3D fighting game, developed and published by Konami, and was released for the Sony PlayStation in November 1998. It was their first notable attempt at making a fighting game for that console in the West, as their first fighter on the system, Lightning Legend Daigo no Daiboken, was never released outside of Japan. And unlike most fighting games at the time, both of these games had no arcade counterpart, and were rather just straight to console releases. Which, I don't know how that makes me feel about it going in. Well, there's no use beating around the bush. Let's just pop this in and see what's up. When you boot up the game, you are met with a short FMV intro sequence. It's a PS1 CG FMV, so those are always kinda nightmarish to look at. Fortunately, it's like 20 seconds long, so it's not that bad. Funnily enough, this whole sequence of how the characters cut in and out and how the main character guy has a build-up to a big punch is reminiscent of Tekken 3's arcade opening. In fact, even the title screen has the whole kanji with English title thing with the black background going on. That also reminds me of Tekken. And how the main menu and options menu also kinda look like a Tekken. Ooh, and also how the game goes into an attract mode and statistics showcase when you let the game sit at the title for a little bit. Just like Tekken. Huh. But I'll tell you what though, the first time you let the game run through the attract mode, it shows a tutorial demonstration of how to play the game, like one of them olden SNK arcade titles. That's pretty neat, considering there is no actual need for them to do this, as there's no actual arcade version before this. I dig the effort. Upon pressing start at the title screen, you are presented with a number of game types, all of which are not unfamiliar for your average fighting game. You got a normal mode, which is just your standard arcade mode, fight through some guys, a mid-boss, and then a final boss, which upon completing with a character, you unlock that character's mid-boss, adding more characters to the roster you get to play as. You also got a versus mode, where you fight against another player in a stage that you pick. Time attack, which is just normal mode set to 1 round per stage, and keeps track of the total amount of time of the current run, the time it took to beat the current stage, and the time average of the stages you've already beaten, which honestly is a pretty great feature to let you know how well you're doing right there. Survival mode, where you pick a character and fight a never-ending barrage of opponent after opponent, and see how long you can last until you're defeated in a single life, recovering a bit of health after each stage. A training mode to practice your moves and stuff. Watch mode to spectate 2 computer-controlled characters beating the shit out of each other. And an options mode, where you can change the game's difficulty, volume, controls, save, and load data, and etc, etc. You can also see your records here, including the rankings of your most used character, and best scores for both time attack and survival, as well as the character profiles for some quick facts about the fighters who are available, and even the ones who aren't available yet, just without their character portraits. Look, they even got everyone's favorite up in here. There's Jin from Tekken, Pai-chan and Kage from Virtua Fighter, that guy from The Cure, Steven Seagal? And, wait, I'm sorry? His name is David Human?
Yeah, what else would his name be? David Animal?
Alright, that's enough not playing the game, and let's start playing the game by jumping into normal mode with our boy Yugo. As far as presentation goes, it's certainly not awful, but it's not amazing either. Though there isn't much going on in the character select screen besides it being kinda bland, the characters themselves look actually impressively modeled, especially for a PS1 title. Stages and their backgrounds look pretty good as well. Additionally, as shown in previous clips, the main gameplay screen is laid out like any other fighter. Life bars, win points, timer, and all that jazz are placed at the top half of the screen, with the fighters duking it out just below it. All that being said, however, most of it looks quite uninspired. Like the green health bar that turns red when taking damage, and the overall health bar design look like they were ripped straight out of DOA 1 or Virtua Fighter, while some of the stages themselves also look very Tekken-ish. Almost too Tekken-ish. The spot is just a potato version of Heihachi's Tekken 2 stage, and the slum is just straight up Paul's Tekken 3 stage. Even how the stages scroll by and react to both the players and the camera's movement is super reminiscent of Tekken 3. At first glance, the game even looks indiscernible from other fighters, and it kinda makes the game not stand out at all, in my opinion. Though besides that, in terms of presentation, the music is pretty alright, being mainly composed of rock. I really like the themes for the spot and mansion stages, with the latter of the two just striking a certain chord with me. I just can't quite put my finger on it. And similar to the presentation, the gameplay itself is just a mishmash of all the other major 3D fighting games that were released around the same time, mainly Tekken, Virtua Fighter, and Dead or Alive. The button layout is similar to Virtua Fighter and DOA. You got 2 attack buttons, one for punch and one for kick. Pressing a direction and an attack button yield different results akin to the likes of other fighting games, with each character having a number of different string combinations they can pull off based around the real-life fighting style they are supposed to be using. For example, characters using ninjutsu are fast and light on their feet, while characters using wrestling sacrifice that quickness in order to focus on big damage grapples and single strikes, and so on and so forth. You also have a block button. Wait, scratch that. It's actually a defense button. Instead of just being pure blocking, it involves more dodging instead. I mean, it still acts pretty much like a normal block button, but with the added pizzazz of your character fluidly moving out of the way from incoming attacks. And if you're defending against a combo string, you can also hold down the button and press and hold the up directional button at the end of the opponent's string to evade and be placed at the side of the opponent, maybe even the back if you're lucky. Pretty nice for counterattacking, though the game feels a bit slow in some regards. The responsiveness to the input of the buttons is a bit delayed, so things usually come out later than you think they would. Attacks are sluggish, as the startup and recovery time of most moves is more often than not bigger than normal, leaving the other person a huge window to come in and counter with an attack, so sometimes your counterattack might just get counterattacked. In addition to those two, you have a catch button, which really just acts like a throw button, with most of the characters having two throws, a forward throw and a neutral throw. But it can also act like the reversal system in DOA, if you press backwards and the catch button at the same time. Each character's reversal does a different thing. Yugo's is a counter hit stun attack, Douglas has an all-around parry that leaves the other character back turned, and etc, etc. They work on most generic looking high attacks, though for like 99% of the roster, the timing to use it is strict and very inconsistent, often not working on flips, mid and low attacks, elbows, knees, headbutts, basically anything other than a basic ass high attack. So unless you're using Douglas, who has a parry window of 5 seconds or something, it's not really worth trying to do a reversal. As for the actual movement, moving around feels very Tekken 3-like, almost even Soul Calibur-esque. I say this because it's got a copy of Soul Calibur's 8-way run system, where you can move forward, backwards, as well as sidestep into the background and foreground by pressing the button in the direction desired on the D-pad, albeit a bit slower and stiffer by comparison. Luckily, double tapping the direction you want to go in does a dash in that direction, so it speeds up the movement, if only a little. And if you're far enough away, and if you hold that direction, you're able to run. You can also do a running jump kick or sliding kick, depending on which attack button you used. Just like in Tekken. Well, additionally, there are some other moves that incorporate sidestepping when doing the move, so that's pretty neat. Still though, it doesn't really help that the default movement speed is slow, so you might get hit when trying to move around it anyways. But wait, back up a bit. If the up and down directional buttons make you sidestep, then how do you jump and duck? Well...
You can't. You can't.
Yup! There's no jumping or crouching in this game. The press of the up and down D-pad buttons don't do it. Guarding and pressing the buttons don't do it. So how you do it? More importantly though, how do you avoid and or block high and low attacks? Well, since you can't crouch, you can't avoid high attacks, so you can just stand and defend against them. For low attacks, it's actually deceptively simple. It's the same way you block them in other fighting games. Press down on the D-pad and block. But instead of a crouching animation and you visibly guarding against the attacks, your character just stands there, looking like they're doing a standing block. But when the low attack comes out, they play a little game of hopscotch and move their feet out of the way. It's a bit much, Kensei, but I guess that's fine, since you're trying to really set yourself apart from the pack. Speaking of the pack, the combo structure of this game isn't any different from any other 3D fighting game, which is not a bad thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You launch them in the air, juggle them a bit with a few hits, and then they fall to the ground. There are also some attacks that can leave a standing opponent stunned, so you have a chance to keep the combo going through that route instead. But because your attacks come out so slowly, your recovery window from doing the move is longer than the opponent's stun state, so you can't really follow up with anything, let alone a jab or two. So combos sometimes don't work and you just drop it. But you know what combos won't drop when you actually input buttons though? Throw combos. Some characters have grab combos where they can extend their throw into a multi-throw by a few extra inputs during the throw. Think King from Tekken. The most notable of the characters that can do this are wrestlers such as David and Ann, as well as Douglas, among a few others. Whether you drop your opponent intentionally or not, you can always follow up with a grounded attack, where you can hit the other guy while they're lying on the ground. Everyone can do it by pressing down and then an attack button while they're on the floor, one for punch and one for kick. If you find yourself in this situation, make note that most of the downward strikes are vertical, so you can roll toward and away from your opponent, as well as toward the background or the foreground by using the directional and face buttons. You're actually able to roll away as much as you want, and then press up to stand back up. Alternatively, there are some offensive ways to get the jump on the opponent while getting back up. Similar to other games, there are also wake-up attacks. While you're on the ground, you can press either the punch button to do a get-up mid-attack, or the kick button to do a get-up low attack. There is also a variation of this when you are tripped up by an attack or get stunned, where if you input an attack right before you hit the floor, you can do some sort of lay-down attack, I think. For some reason I can never pull this off, but the AI can magically do it every time. On that note, I'd like to bring up the point that the opponent AI can either be smart as shit or dumb as hell. Sometimes they can read your input and interrupt you in the nick of time before you can hit them. Other times they can just stand there for hours, waiting to get clocked. And more often than not, every time they are knocked down, they will always try to do a get-up attack, no matter how far you are from them. You could literally be a full screen away from them, and they'll just fucking kick the nothing in front of them. And it's almost always the low attack variation. Also, as mentioned before, I personally can't figure out how to do the laydown attack when you get tripped up or stunned, but the computer seems to have no trouble doing them at all. I've pressed every button with every combination I can think of, but nothing ever comes out, so be prepared to get whacked by it every time you get the AI slipping. But honestly, despite all my gripes, is the game bad? Well, no. I don't think it's great either, but I'd be hard-pressed to say that there is no fun to be had here. That's for sure. Easy to grasp controls, a pretty alright soundtrack, a number of different modes, and tons of unlockable extra characters that brings up the total count to 22 fighters makes for a pretty okay fighting game, especially for a single player. Tons to do and tons to see. There's even an extra mode you unlock after getting all the characters called Running BUGI, where you pick a character and do a foot race against time on a floating racetrack in a black void. Now that's some content. However, the game suffers from the lack of originality and flair, being just a hodgepodge of ideas and mechanics borrowed from other games like Virtua Fighter's button layout, Dead or Alive's reversal system, Soul Calibur's 8-way run turned walk, and Tekken's, well, everything else. Everything that this game attempts to do has already been done before in other games, and they're better. Overall, if I were to sum up my feelings for this game into just one word, it'd be meh. Not too bad to be considered awful, and not too good to be considered great. Kensei Sacred Fist is aggressively mediocre. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Trying to do so many things, but does nothing to push the envelope in any way. No doubt that something like this would definitely be better for someone who likes to play their fighting games in solitude. But for those who want to experience it with other people, maybe not so much. Kensei is just meh.
Well, that's over with. Now can you all just go, please, so I can get back to what I was supposed to do?
Fair enough.
Fine. You may have won this time, guy, but mark my words. Next time, you won't get off that easily. If you liked and enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments down below. Be it about the game or about the video itself, I'm interested in hearing about your thoughts. So, until the next video, see you then.